Good evening. It's time for another story chat with me, Sergio Paez. How are you guys doing? Great to have you. Good evening. It's Wednesday, and hopefully your week is going really well. Today, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about, talk about storyboards, and talk about drawing. That's something that we always do when we're doing our storyboards, and it's a wonderful tool if you have your drawing skills down to communicate your ideas and actually come up with an image for something that's in your head. This is what we do as story artists, is to really define the images when it comes to creating stories. So today I wanted to take a little bit of time and just talk about some of these drawing tips. I'll also invite you, if you have any drawing tips that you want to share with the gang, please do go ahead and comment in there. We're beaming to you on Facebook and YouTube. And really the idea is that we all share and we collectively grow as a group. And I should say from the front, big shout out to everybody at Storyboard Art and all the peeps that are on there. We got a brand new Discord channel that you guys can join, and you can find more of these tips and just share ideas. The idea of networking is huge, and we like to promote that stuff. It's all about career techniques and networking when it comes to story development. So that's big on us. So big shout out to you guys. Hey, Shadow Jack, what's up, my friend? We got Icelandic 94. All right, coming to join us here. So let me talk about some of the mindset things that you want to get into when you begin drawing. Now, you can kind of see this on the edge of the screen there. I got my Cintiq monitor. This is basically just a fancy digital monitor that you draw on. Now, I'm going to be talking a little about drawing tips, but you guys probably know this already. It's going to go down to the basics and the fundamentals. But I feel like the fundamentals are really what we need to get down in order to communicate well. And oftentimes we forget about that stuff. And I think it's a really smart idea to really get those fundamentals down and really remember a process when we come to drawing. That's something that's been very useful to me in the way that I draw and in my career. So let me talk a little bit about that. So right away, let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me bring this up, and we can do that here. So I'll add this. This is my template, and I'm bringing this to you on Autodesk Sketchbook. This is a free program that you can download. It's a really cool drawing program. It's very simple, very easy to use. I use it a lot for doing demos and just quick sketches. It's free, which is amazing. So thanks for Autodesk to do that. Similar to Photoshop, you have your layers, you have your brushes and different tools. You can have, there's a really cool perspective tool up here that we can go into if you like. But what I've done here is opened up a template. So let me show you what that looks like. First of all, there's a little bit of notes. These were when I was doing production work, so I put just a written text note here to crop the images down to the 16:9 frame. The first thing I should talk about, and you guys should all know about this, hopefully it's not news to you. If it is, well, hopefully you learned something here too, is aspect ratio. So this is how rectangular your frame is, how square or rectangular your frame is when you're drawing your storyboards. You always want to have that in mind. So that's called the aspect ratio of your screen. And right now this is set up as a 16:9 aspect ratio. Okay, so that means the horizontal height of the frame versus the length. Okay, and that's what that's about. I have the black mask on here, so my canvas is actually larger than my drawing area, which is within this frame. And this is my 16:9 frame. I'll turn that on and off so you can see it there, right? Then that frame I don't really touch. You can even lock that. So there's just like in Photoshop or any of these programs that run with layers, you can lock that stuff down, and so it won't move and you won't draw on top of it. This is my drawing layer, and then I got a background layer, so I'll turn that off for a second. But I usually start with a gray background. I like to do a middle tone background. Then I draw on top of that with like a black line. And that way I already have something there, and I can pop it out if I need to create some emphasis by putting a color or a white tone behind the character or the shape that I'm drawing. That's one way to really keep this, to keep it simple, fast, and you can actually make it pretty effective and pop things out. So let me clear that. I'm going to get rid of that background. So now what we're doing here is just on a white background. Just like in any other program, you can adjust the size of your brushes. There's a fast way to do that here in Sketchbook Pro. Now, one thing I always mention when it comes to software is going to change. It doesn't matter what program you're using. Toon Boom, Storyboard Pro is a really popular storyboarding software. A lot of people use Photoshop for doing storyboards because it's been the standard of like just drawing programs. There's a timeline in Photoshop. I actually have a video on YouTube that you guys can check out how to set up your Photoshop for doing storyboards. And a lot of people have given some good comments there and also share some tips. So I invite you to see that and check that out. So there's that. And all right, we got a couple questions in there. I'll get to all of you. Hey, what's up, Kenny? Good to see you, buddy. You're asking about aspect ratios. My favorite aspect ratio is actually the 2:3:5 widescreen aspect ratio. It's much more narrow and rectangular, and I find it really cool to draw in. So what that looks like, just because Kenny's asking about it, is something like this. So this would all be black, right? Assume this is all filled in, and then you compose within this much more reduced rectangular frame. And I think that just really fun. It reminds me of those like just widescreen movies like Star Wars, Lawrence of Arabia, and 2001: Space Odyssey. All of that was shot in a 2:3:5 aspect ratio. It's much more rectangular and cinematic. Okay, so let me get rid of that. Right now the standard seems to be 16:9 because your phone is in that format. Most TVs, widescreen TVs, are in this 16:9 format. A lot of movies are shot that way, or they're slightly cropped down in the final export when it goes onto like your streaming platform and stuff to these 16:9 ratios. So don't worry about like the numbers, just know that it kind of looks like this, okay? Now, let me get to some drawing tips that I really want you guys to understand when it comes to basic stuff. This is your composition, and it's really important to draw with this frame. So don't just draw with a blank sheet or a blank canvas, right? I always like to have the frame in there, and you're guided by the frame. Now, I don't actually draw on that frame layer, I draw one below it. So if you notice, if I scribble around this, and I erase it, it doesn't actually affect the frame. That's on another layer. That's one thing you wanna do. So now here's the basics of all this when it comes to drawing storyboards. You wanna identify what your screen direction is and where to place your character in the frame. So basically, you have the left and you have the right. So you divide your picture plane in the middle, and anything that's on this side is going to be on screen left, and anything on that side is going to be on screen right. That's pretty obvious, okay? And if you put something in the middle, well, that's kind of a neutral shot. So let me just draw a quick character. It's just a face, right? Now I do these in like a very simplified shorthand. That's a lot of what I do when I make storyboards. Is I create these repeatable, recognizable shapes that I can fill in really quickly, and that way I can knock out a storyboard drawing really fast. And that's where I start. This is my rough drawing. Now I'm very efficient with my lines. I don't try and overwork the actual drawing. I won't go in there and noodle and render and create a lot of tone. I want to make it really efficient, okay? So what I've drawn in here is a kind of a close-up or a medium close-up shot. And now that I have this on a different layer, this is one thing that you can do with digital tools. Now, using the move command, I can move this around depending on my composition. Now, this is really important because most people default to putting your character in the middle of the frame, and that could be slightly boring. So, how about pushing it to screen left, or even pushing your character to screen right? Now, I wouldn't go all the way, because then what happens is you're kind of tangent with the edge of the frame. And also here, it feels like a little bit awkward that your character's touching on the left side of the frame too. So you kind of want to do this on the left third, right? And you guys have heard this before, but you got the rule of thirds. You can divide up your picture plane into thirds, and I'll just show you what that looks like with a red line here. So if I just draw this and I break this out into thirds, right? Like where these lines intersect is basically kind of the rule of thirds. I'll bring down the opacity a little bit so you can see that. I can even move this I can move this down a layer so that my character layer is popping out on top of it. At any rate, that rule of thirds is just a compositional rule, so you're not placing everything just dead center in the middle. That's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid symmetry and just like, you know, like just repetitive compositions or the basic stuff. Come up with something new. The other thing you can do is you can tilt your camera angle. This is one way of thinking about it. Your composition and your picture plane doesn't change, but what's inside your composition, imagine tilting your camera lens, right? So all of a sudden everything is tilted. Then that's one interesting way to get a Dutch angle and to create visual interest. So these are just some basic things that I want to repeat to everybody, that you probably have heard this at a certain point, and maybe you're working through a storyboard composition. You don't know quite why it's not working, and maybe it just feels a little bit boring, and maybe you just put your character in the center and it's not that exciting. So let me go ahead and erase this stuff and talk a little bit about shortcuts, right? So that's one thing that is really kind of key that I do a lot, is figure out drawing shortcuts, okay? Now, what I refer to with drawing shortcuts is this idea of simplifying your characters and your backgrounds, whatever elements that are in your composition, so that they read at an instant like a really graphic shape. And you create an efficiency of line, and you create an efficiency of your execution, so you're not overworking everything, and you actually have a fast production method, okay? So that's a little bit about drawing shortcuts. What does that mean? So you guys who have been following for a while and have seen my book, I point out this like Starman, right? And then my co-author Anson Ju talks about drawing silhouettes, right? He'll do things like this, which are, you know, creating a silhouette shape of a character that it looks like kind of like a stick figure, but it really has a little more volume to it, right? I talk about doing Starman, which is basically you just do an appendage and it looks like a head with a bunch of, you know, star-like appendages out there. That's just the most basic of shapes that I'm talking about. So when it comes to actually drawing stuff, you want to come up with a way of drawing that you can quickly block out a shape without having it take too long. And this is a rough pass. So, you know, you can keep it rough and simple in your thumbnail idea, but you don't worry too much about the execution and the detail. What you're worrying about, the overall screen real estate that these shapes are going to take up. So let's say there's a character there, and in the background you have like somewhat of a car shape, right? You can just throw some wheels on there, and there you go. You know, if you put a little shadow, a little drop shadow, and then you actually draw the street, you know, you can have just a simplified character here. And I'm not worried about detail. I'm more worried about where to place the elements of composition that are going to be important in your shot. Then what you do is you go in on a separate layer, and this is the great thing about digital tools. You can go in and clean this up as much as you want. So I just created a new layer, and on top of that, I can go in and actually add some more detail. So like, let's say this guy has a particular hair shape, and maybe I want to change the expression that he has on his face. I can go in and actually clean up this character and readjust some of the posing, okay? Now, one thing you'll also notice that I do, that I'm trying to be very conscious of, is that my line is very direct when I'm actually drawing this. Now, I have an underdrawing, so I can like use that as a starting point. I kind of know what I've done before. Okay, let's say that is my cleanup, very fast and rough. Like, this is still really crude. but the idea, let me go back in here. I'll get rid of this layer and draw something else. Is the idea that you draw with a confident line. So a lot of times I see artists, they do this like kind of sketchy outline. They do this idea of a shape because they don't quite know what to do. Maybe they're doing like volumetric drawings. They're just getting really sketchy with how they do that. That's okay. You know, gesture drawing, sometimes you need to do that. And you get like these just to form the character. You don't quite know where to place it, so you're just like searching. You get these like searching lines in here. I want to encourage you guys to get into the habit of drawing directly, where your line goes down in a confident way. You pick the spot where you start, and you draw a very confident line that's very secure, very solid, and you create a shape. Okay, so that was one shape that I did. It wasn't this kind of sketchy, I think it's gonna go here, I think it should be here, it's wobbly, that kind of thing. No, what I'd like to encourage you guys to do is you get that confidence of the line. It creates an efficiency with the way that you draw. You're gonna end up drawing faster, and your drawing is gonna look cleaner. Okay, so when do you do that stuff? There are times for me where I will sketch out a composition and I'll do things like this. And this is what my rough pass sometimes looks like. I'll just draw in like, okay, that looks like a tree. There might be a mountain range there. Is there an airplane that's like coming up? Maybe there's a set of clouds. And here I'm really just sketching things. There might be like a series of buildings right back here. Is there a river? I don't know. I'm just coming up with sketchy ideas, and you see me do that. Or maybe you see some of my roughs, and that's the way my roughs look like. Okay, that's my underdrawing. I usually never show that to people unless I'm doing a demo. Okay, so then let me go back in here, and I'll do that little method that I just told you about. Now I'll go in with this as the cleanup. So once I have that concept in my mind that I know the tree is going to be on screen right, then I can go in with the, whoops, I'm on the wrong layer. Let me go in with a bold shape and actually see, I didn't like that. So let me do that again. And let me think of how I'm going to do this. I was just at a place which had a bunch of palm trees, and you get these like kind of cool shapes that come out. They look like leaves almost, the way that a palm tree can come together. So then, like, this is what I will draw with a much more solid line, you see, and then maybe I'll add another one. Maybe there's another tree back here, and I'm outlining a tree shape, okay? And there's like this bulky part that's under the palm tree, and things like that. There are also trees, and especially palm trees, can be in any direction, right? So it can be bending. And you can have like the leaves, and I'll go off the frame here. It's okay to draw outside of it. Just I know that the composition and the main elements are going to be here. Maybe a couple of coconuts fell down here, and then I'm going to go in and again with a nice, solid, crisp, sharp line, draw that in. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, I'm going to go in here and I can turn off that underdrawing layer. You see now I have a tight line that I can clean up. I'll go in with a different brush and maybe a gray tone, and I'll go in and let me make this a lot bigger. I'll go in and fill in some of these tones. So it's on a layer that's underneath, and I'm not ruining my outline drawing that I just did, but I'm going in and quickly drawing a background tone, okay? So this is the idea of just working in layers, of having tight, confident line, in understanding the shapes and the real estate that you're going to take up in your picture. That's really what you want to be doing when it comes to drawing a composition. Okay, now I could take this a lot further, but I just wanted to give you a quick demo of kind of the mindset and the thinking that I do when it comes to drawing a storyboard. And we can get in a little bit more to the technique and detail of stuff in sequential art. And like I said, I encourage you to see like some of those videos that I posted on YouTube of how to set up your Photoshop, just very basic and fast. And then if you really want to see some demos, well, join us in the Visual Story course where I actually show you, I'll take you through some of my techniques working in some of the programs. So some of you guys have seen that already. All right, well, let me put this away and let me get to some of your questions. Thanks for hanging out while I did some of that. All right, let me scroll down here and see what people are doing. So I want to bring this up on screen, but hey, Kenny, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for your question. I did mention this. I love the 2:3:5 aspect ratio. So yeah, that's what it's all about. Okay, let's see what other questions we got up here. What's the name of the book? I should bring this up on screen. So I should pull that off my bookshelf. I don't know where it exactly is, but I wrote a book called Professional Storyboarding Rules of Thumb with Anson Ju, who's another amazing story artist, works on big Hollywood movies. And he actually called me up one day and he said, hey man, I need help working on this book. Can you help me finish it? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And we both teamed up to write this book. It's been a really good guide. People have given us some really good feedback and comments there. And I have even gotten a lot of messages from universities and schools who are using that book as their textbook. So I think that's really flattering. And there's a lot of interviews from pros in there. So Professional Storyboarding Rules of Thumb. I'll come up with the link and show you that. Thanks for that, Shadow Jack. This is the book. Whoops, let me bring that back up again for everybody who wants to check it out on Amazon. Leave a review. You can be honest if you like it or not. I do that to help. So that's what we did that. I wrote that a while ago, but I think it's still a pretty good guide, and hopefully we can update that and give you another tips. But when it comes to like seeking out more story information, I invite you guys to come check out Storyboard Art. That's the platform that we set up for visual storytellers, and that class I just mentioned, the visual story course, is free. So come check that out. If you want some really in-depth knowledge, well, we got our mentorship group, which are some of the advanced artists that are working in that right now. And we'll tell you guys a little bit more about that later in the year as registration opens up. But that's a really, really cool program. The progress in there is really awesome. And what I really like to hear and see is that people now are starting to get some jobs. They're getting freelance work. They're starting to apply to studios. A couple of our previous mentorship students have landed work at some of the major studios, which overjoys me. I mean, I think just knowing that we were part of that process is great. I always give them credit and say it's the work that they did. They put the work in. They put in the hours to do it, and the results came through. So that's on them, and great job for everybody who's done that. So cool. Let me bring this one. Icelandic 94. Thanks for joining us. What's the best way to increase efficiency while maintaining quality in a storyboard? This is a really interesting question. The way I answer this is that my focus and what I would encourage you to do would be that you always worry about quality first, that the efficiency and the speed will come later. If you worry about the quality of your boards and making everything just as amazing and the best thing that you can possibly do, given the time that you have, because you're always going to be under the gun and you have a schedule. But if you can make your boards awesome, nobody's ever going to remember how long you did something, but they'll remember how good and how well it came out. So just remember that. Now, that being said, you should always think about quality. Make sure you turn in a really quality product. Don't skimp on anything. If you look at a sequence, and if you recognize anything that you can do to improve it, go for it. Don't let anything slip through that you yourself know can be better. All right? Just keep that in mind. Now, ways to create efficiency while working with your storyboards. There's that shortcut idea that I mentioned. The other one is actually setting up your workspace and your environment. And this comes down to a technical thing. So inside of your programs like Storyboard Pro or Photoshop, you want to set up your interface and your toolbars and your shortcut buttons so that it's duplicating layers. You can easily cut out shapes and brushes. You can do like quick fills with action items that you set as buttons. So learning those details of the software is actually really a good thing. You can also set up a palette of brushes, like you have a big wide brush for doing big strokes. You can have a nice fine pencil type brush for doing your detail work. And you set it up so they're buttons. You click, 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 and then automatically you have those buttons ready to go. And with your Wacom tablet, you can set up hotkeys and the menu, the menu selection on the side of the actual panel of your Wacom screen. You can set those buttons to be those like hotkey, fast clickable things there, right? That's one way to do it. The other one, when it comes to efficiency, one of the best things that you can do is research and planning when it comes to your storyboard sequence, okay? So when you get an idea, when you get a sequence, you really want to do as much research as possible before you begin your work. So gather all of your imagery, all of your research information. If you're going to be doing like a car chase, you want to make sure you have images of the cars that you're going to be using, all the character designs that you're going to need. If you don't have character designs, we'll find some, download and make a folder of reference file of the images that you think you want to use for character poses, for clothing, etc. If somebody guy's got a weapon, what that looks like, so that you can easily refer to those things very quickly. So part of that is I have a second monitor that I use, so I put those reference materials on one monitor, and then I can draw on the other. And I can go back and forth, look at things, move things around, and that's one way to create efficiency. So the prep work that you do will help create some efficiencies there, all right? Okay, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Let me go to the next one. Awesome, you're up next again. Icelandic, great questions here, buddy. What is the best advice you could give somebody who's about to graduate from school, like you, in art and illustration? Well, let me tell you, my friend, what exactly are you looking to go into? If you're looking to go into storyboards, what I would recommend highly is that you put together a storyboard specific portfolio, gather as much material as you can, and get advice from people, industry folk, recruiters, jump on our Discord channel, share that there before you actually solicit some people, and then you go out looking for work, okay? Now that's like specific advice when it comes to like a storyboarding portfolio. Let me give you another bit of like life advice when it comes to jumping in the industry, is that this is a marathon when it comes to advancing your career in the film industry and the entertainment industry. A lot of us have this goal and dream of working in film, being creative, and you got to think of this as a long-term project, okay? I'm talking 30 years long-term, right? If you think of a career like that, you start today, 30 years from now, you might be in your 50s and 60s, maybe even pushing in your 70s, and you still want that career, you still want to be working. So think of that chunk of time, that beginning prep that you do, that first 5 to 10 years, is just you preparing, grinding, working, learning, making sure you have that mindset of soaking up every possible information, mentoring from other people. So you want to find a mentor, you want to find somebody who's going to lead you, get advice from a coach, from somebody who's been down that road before. And that way they can point out the pitfalls, they can help you avoid some of the landmines that you might potentially hit. And you're also going to get advice from people who have done it, okay? I've been a professional artist now almost going on, I don't even want to say it, it's going to reveal my age and all my gray hair. It's like going on almost 30 years now, probably about 25, 30 years. I don't even know what the number is. And like, I've hit, a lot of landmines, and I've really had a lot of mentors in my life. There's a lot of people I look up to in the industry that have become contacts and personal friends. And I'm really lucky that they're in my circle of people that I know. And that has helped me become a pro artist. And I've done this ever since I graduated college. So this is possible. Don't listen to the people who are not in the entertainment industry telling you that you can't do it. Don't listen to your friends and family members who are trying to protect you, and they have good intentions, but they're out there saying, oh man, don't do it. You're not gonna make it, you're not good enough. Don't listen to those people. Listen to the people that have actually done it, who know how you need to get there and what you need to do in order to improve yourself to reach your goal. Because that was me, and it took a whole lot of work, but I never lost sight of the focus that I had to actually get into the industry. I didn't care. I was not willing to accept anything else than working in the entertainment industry. And I had to do what it takes to get there. And that means improving myself, working on my drawings, studying from books, from people, from online materials, everything that I could find. And this was one of the reasons why we founded the Storyboard Art platform, so that people could have a place where they can go to find this information. But I would just say, be very selective about who you know and who is giving you advice, and choose the ones that have been successful in this industry. And by, everybody's definition of success is different. But yeah, I think that is something that is really important, so that you're guided by those who can show you the path. Okay, so and then you have a follow-up comment: patience and keep learning. Getting the gig may not happen overnight, so keep practicing, network, and post your work online to get yourself out there. Thanks, Shadowjack. That's awesome advice. I think right on. I couldn't agree more. So it's not easy. Nothing in life that's worth getting is very easy. So you got to work at it, okay? And that is that's hard. And you have to face a potential rejection. You have to face difficulty. But guess what? There's no other way to learn if you don't face that. If you don't actually do the story exercise, you don't actually do the sequence and get feedback. You might feel like it's a failure, like you've crashed and burned. But let me tell you, that's the best possible way to learn. So I do encourage you guys to come check us out, because you're going to learn in a somewhat safe environment, okay? Where we're not going to yell at you or talk down to you. At least, I hope not. We like to encourage a positive community, and I think the people in our network and in our community is fantastic. So check out some of the stuff that we have there. So India here is asking, I'm a current student trying to break into the industry now, and I really need to hear this. Thanks. Well, India, you're welcome. That's awesome that you said that. Let me pull up Alex here. Alex Carrillo is asking, what's a storytelling advice you wish you had been told when you were starting out? I have a whole list of things, but one of them I think that is really important that I didn't realize till later on was the importance of story structure. And I talked a little bit about this in a previous live stream that I did. But when I got into story work and animation work, yes, I knew about the storytelling. I knew about film language because people had told me I needed to study that. So there's one. Let's check off that box. You should be studying film, studying narrative projects, storytelling, visual narrative projects. So that means TV shows, movies, video games, anything that has a story, even comic books, that you can follow a storyline and understand that, study that. So film language is really important. Study the classics, study films from the 40s, 50s, 60s, Westerns, any kind of genre that you're into, study them, watch them, know them, right? Be able to reference them. When somebody says Akira Kurosawa, and the films, know which ones are important, okay? And be able to reference the shots, the storylines, and what that's all about, right? That's having film knowledge and your film history. That's really, really important. And it's actually fun. I didn't think it was, sometimes you're like, oh man, I'm not into this slow, old movie from the 50s. But when you actually get into it, oh man, some of this composition is great. Have you guys seen The Train? We highlighted that in some of our social media. That's a really awesome black and white film with Burt Lancaster. Man, check that out. That's some really awesome action, and the way they filmed that, just amazing compositions. I think that was 1960s, 68. Somebody help me out on that. Anyway, okay, that's one advice, film language. The next one I want to tell you about is story structure. Learn about story structure, because you might learn about drawing. People will tell you about composition. But I highly encourage you to study writing and story structure. That's usually kind of in the writer's department, the screenwriter's department. But you have to know about that stuff. You have to know how to construct a scene, and then you apply that visually. So that's why I mentioned that in my book, that it's a mix of different skill sets that make you a story artist. And that's very important, because it will lead you in your future endeavors, and it's really cool. Okay, so cool. Let me get to a couple more of these, and then we'll call it a night. But let me see this. All right, this got a recommendations here from XO Little. Strong recommendation for Godfather. So cinematic. Yep, fantastic movie. I love the Godfather films. Thanks, Shadowjack. 1964 for The Train. All right, here's one from India again. Do you have to decide your niche, live action, animation, film, etc. early on? No, you don't. No, you don't. You can, I would encourage you to have a very strong solid portfolio that shows off your foundation, that you have solid compositions, you know how to draw, you have good staging and a good cinematic eye when it comes to constructing a scene. These are all the things that you're going to need in any kind of genre, okay, any kind of niche. And then after that, you can specialize. Do you want to go into feature animation? Do you want to do episodic work in TV? Do you want to do live action stuff? Do you want to do video games? Okay, video games is huge. What if you want to do virtual reality? I'm working on one of those projects right now, and there's some challenges there. So it's all about storytelling and filmmaking. Very important that you do that stuff. And you don't have to choose right away, okay? Awesome, thanks for backing me up on this one. Thanks, Kenny. A comment from Kenny Valenka here. Knowing screenwriting has taught me a ton about storyboarding, even in productions where you only get a chunk of the whole script. Yeah, there you go. I couldn't agree more. It's really fun. I actually find that really enjoyable to read up on these things and learn about it. So check it out. All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it there, and I encourage you to visit us on some of the things that we offer. Let me see if I can pull up this one from the Visual Story course. If you haven't seen this, it's my shameless plug. Come join us. That means you get into our network, and that means you can join us on Discord, and then we're going to bring you in. You're going to be part of the crew, and I'd love to see you there, so come check that out. All right, and with that, we'll end it, but thanks you guys. I really appreciate you hanging out, and we'll see you next time on my little story chats. All right, have a wonderful evening. Keep up on those projects, and keep working hard, keep drawing. That's what you got to be doing. All right, talk to you soon.